I feel like intelligence is overvalued by intelligent people. Um, I've been called intelligent my entire life, to be honest with you. Um, or at least since, the point where intelligence sort of started to matter and actually um, shine through in sort of communication. I was told I was intelligent, like I was a smart person. I don't think my academics necessarily reflected that, but um, I'd have conversations with people and then they'd sort of come away from it giving me compliments about my supposed intelligence. But the issue that I see as someone who's Christian um, is that I think intelligent people, I guess it's pride is probably the best way to put it, but I just find that a lot of intelligent people, like intelligence there is their entire identity to the point that I think it actually like usurps their own pursuit of righteousness, um, which I think is incredibly problematic. Um, it's interesting because so many different sort of philosophical worldviews and ways of thinking about the world and character and what's even valuable will have sort of different views on this, but certainly as a Christian, I think pursuit of righteousness and morality and um, I don't want to say just like being a good person because that's a very simplistic way to put it, but like pursuing righteousness, prioritizing character and virtue. That's probably a good way to put it. Prioritizing virtue is like the most important thing. It's above all else. It is at the very top of the value hierarchy, And so when intelligent people have intelligence, and I think the problem really is that other people affirm this all the time because when it's happened to me. Like when you speak with an apparently intelligent person, um, uh, like I don't know, you probably feel the need to compliment them or they receive compliments. Like I feel like it's just sort of such like an obvious thing to comment on when someone comes off as intelligent. I was about to say wise, but I actually think it's a pretty big difference between wisdom and intelligence. I think intelligence really, if you boil it down, is like I think 95% of it is just how you communicate. I think people who come off as intelligent, who have that sort of vibe, I suppose, I think a lot of the time they just have a decent amount of knowledge and they're just really excellent communicators and they're confident and they're sort of poised. They know how to influence other people in that way, perhaps subconsciously, perhaps they're not doing it intentionally, but that's, I don't know, to me in my experience, that's actually a lot of what intelligence is. There are certain topics, I don't actually think I'm that intelligent, really, but, saying that, like, people would just, I'm sort of being humble, but I don't actually mean it, and I'm saying, whatever. I don't actually think I'm that intelligent, really, like the way that I would sort of define intelligence. But certain topics I'll have a lot to say about, and I'll be pretty confident about it, and I would probably have more knowledge on the certain topic than 95% of people. And I think really, when you boil intelligence down to that, like 95% of it is how you communicate and your knowledge, and it's almost superficial in a way. It really strips the virtue, the gift, I think maybe the gift of a lot of its importance. And maybe I'm just commenting on this for my own self, and maybe this isn't sort of a problem with other people, I don't know, but I'm probably more inclined to find interesting about a person, at least immediately on a superficial level when I meet them, when I'm introduced to them. I find it easier to be more interested in their intellect, which I suppose is the way they come, the way they communicate, the way they come off. I'm more interested in that immediately than how good of a person they are, assuming they're not a terrible person. Like assuming they're like a half decent person, that's not what I look at. I think it's a big problem. Intelligence is not a pathway. It's a pathway to innovation and like human progress, I suppose. But it's not. I don't think there's any real value. Um, well, there is value, but there's no. Uh, how do I even put it? I don't know. It's sort of hard to describe. There's no, I suppose, lasting value in my eyes, compared to something like actual true good morality and righteousness and character, because I think those things actually affect the world in an inherently positive way, as opposed to intelligence, which I think is a gift that can be wielded however you please. I think intelligent people are probably prone to being arrogant. I don't know. I think intelligent people have a way of sort of convincing themselves of things that aren't really plausible. That someone else who's perhaps less intelligent, whatever we really mean by that, wouldn't be inclined to believe. Someone who's intelligent would actually believe, just simply because they're able to literally talk themselves into it. Like the internal dialogue, the internal monologue is able to create a convincing argument, which I think is problematic because it means that intelligence isn't an inherent pathway to righteousness, as opposed to righteousness, which is just like good in and of it's like it's always good, obviously. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. It makes me really, especially as a Christian who values evangelism and actually showing people that pursuit of righteousness, that pursuing the kingdom of heaven on earth, is actually so much more valuable than anything I think you can pursue sort of with a dependency on your intelligence. Like anything that you can only pursue as a result of your intelligence, I don't think is as valuable as something you pursue out of faith. Because I think things pursued out of faith, I suppose, are relevant to one's character and goodness and virtue and righteousness and all that. I don't know. That's how I feel. It's something to keep me humble. If I ever make the mistake of valuing my intelligence more, even just sort of, like maybe I'm not consciously doing it, because when I put it like this, it's kind of silly, but if I ever make the mistake of prioritizing and valuing my own intellectual identity more than my identity as like a child of God, someone who pursues virtue, a virtuous person, or perhaps not a virtuous person, but someone who pursues virtue, if I ever make that mistake, that's well, lethal, I think. So yeah, the thought is something to keep me humble. It's something to keep me sort of attuned to what actually really matters in my mind. And it also helps me, I think, understand how people who have been called intelligent their whole lives, and that's been affirmed, and perhaps have never heard the gospel, I think it's perhaps a way to break through to them. Because I think when you dilute intelligence and its products, they're not nearly as valuable, I think, in pretty much every way, as something pursued purely out of righteousness and purity of character. I don't think they're comparable, like the products of both those pursuits. Anyways, I rambled. That's how I feel. This footage probably looks really bad because it's raining. I don't even know what this place is, Aura Domain or whatever. It's raining, and on video, when there's a bunch of tiny particles moving about quickly, the bitrate, or maybe not the bitrate can't handle it, I think is probably the way to put it. So the footage looks a little grainy, a little blurry. That's alright. Anyways, that's all I got to say.